Hello and welcome to Better at Work. On this episode, we are joined by the lovely Julianne Miles. Now, Julianne, over 2 decades, has been supporting thousands of people in their path back to work after a long career break. She's a chartered psychologist and a successful returner herself. She's also internationally recognized expert on returning to work and a pioneer in the development of corporate returner programs. Julianne's mission is to make career breaks a valued part of a lifetime career. She was awarded an MBE in 2019 in recognition for her pivotal role in changing the landscape for UK returners. Plus, guess what? She's got a brand new book out. It's called Return Journey: How to Get Back to Work and Thrive After a Career Break. I've read it. It's brilliant. Julianne is coming to us today from London. Welcome to Better at Work. How are you?
Oh, I'm very well, Cathal. Really great to see you and looking forward to our conversation.
So good to see you again. We've chatted a few times, and actually, Julianne was just telling me earlier that she does a lot of work in Ireland. So for any of our Irish listeners, she's in green today. She's in green.
Just in honor, in
In
honor.
honor of the Irish over there. Anyway, welcome to the show. Now, we start this lovely show of ours with the same question. Where did it all start for you? What happened in your early life or along the way that you think drove this interest in helping people to return to work after a break?
Well, way back when, shall we say, I was on my own career break. So I'd had a first career in corporate strategy and marketing. I decided to pause my career for a number of years when I had two small children. And I had a period where I was sitting around reflecting on what I did next. And I say reflecting, and that sounds very positive, but actually, it wasn't a very positive experience. It was an experience where I felt a bit stuck. I had lots of ideas. I seemed to go nowhere. I felt like I was going around in circles. I couldn't find any help. And in the end, I found my way back to work by retraining as a chartered psychologist and setting up my own career psychology practice. But that memory stuck with me of thinking, where do I go from here? And then I started when I had my career psychology practice, started helping a number of my friends, friends of friends who were in a similar situation, who'd taken a long career break and were really struggling to get back to work. So there was a bit, quite a few kitchen table workshops going on. And over the course of that, I realized both that there was really important support that was needed and it wasn't out there, but also that there was a bigger problem here for people who've taken long career breaks. There were individual challenges, and I'm sure we'll go into those later, but also there was something structurally wrong with our society and with employment in that people who were really strong, really talented, really ready to get back to work were finding that employers' doors were closed.
Hmm.
And after a couple of years going, somebody should do something about this, eventually decided that was me. So 11 years ago now, set up an organization which was called Women Returners, morphed into Career Returners. Um, and, this next stage has led to the book.
Oh, wow. I mean, we're going to talk about career returners as well, but I mean, amazing what you and your team have been doing in that space. But let's get back to this kind of I suppose mental blocks for people, organizations around taking breaks in our careers. How would you like us to think about career breaks in society? Maybe if we start there.
Yeah. I'd like us to really move on. I think we
Hmm.
are we are still stuck in a pattern of thinking about careers that they go in straight lines. And normally that's upwards. And now we are all working much longer. In fact, that's not how careers work. People, they go sideways, they go
Yeah.
down, and they take breaks. And I think we need to start recognizing that and not only ignoring. I think the first step is we'll look past a career break, but actually what we want employers to do, what we want society to do is to value career breaks. And career breaks, for whatever reason, it could be for childcare, it could be elder care, it could be for health reasons. All of those breaks, you grow as a person, you develop
Yeah.
huge amount of skills and experience. and that makes you a stronger employer. So I think that's the societal bit, and we need to remove a lot of these barriers. It's barriers in recruitment, and it's also barriers in our heads,
Yeah.
both people who have taken their career breaks and the managers, the hiring managers who are interviewing them to reframe the notion of a career break.
It's so interesting because you just hear on both sides, organizations worried about when they see a career break on,
Mm,
they go, "Oh God, that person, I'm not sure. They've obviously been out, but they won't be able to hack it,"
yes.
And then on the other side, also, I hear from a lot of women who go, "Oh well, who would want me? Been out too long. I just don't think I have the relevant skills." It's very interesting. I don't know. I was thinking about this actually. I hadn't this as a question, but I think sometimes here in the UK that show Strictly Come Dancing.
Yeah,
And I was reading about Jamie Redknapp's ex-wife, Louise Redknapp,
yeah,
and how she had been out of her career for quite a while, kind of child caring and, looking after the family. And kind of his career was the one that was really taking off after his football career. And I read about how she said, she felt she came back to that show or Strictly Come Dancing and it gave her a light and she kind of was like, okay, it kind of was the first step in her then driving on the next stage for her career. And I just thought of it today when we were when I was preparing for your chat. I thought, geez, there's probably a lot of people out there, particularly women, in most cases,
mm,
who do take a lot of the child caring responsibilities and almost put their life on hold a little bit
yeah.
while they do that, right?
Yeah, and I think it's that they put their working life on hold.
That's
Clearly, it's
that's a
not,
very good point. Yes, they
you know,
put their working life on
it's
hold.
not
Yeah.
you're very much active in life. It's
Yeah.
you're doing something different. And I think it is, as you say, it's largely women. Typically, it's 90% of people who take caring related career breaks for childcare or relative care. It is still women. However, I do want to say that the challenges that we're talking about, they apply just as much to men who
Yeah.
take career breaks.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
absolutely the same for both. But, you know, it is you do feel you lose a lot of your identity,
That's right.
and I think that's what underpins this loss of confidence. You start
Yeah.
saying childcare is classic. You hear women saying, "Well, you know, I'm just a mum.
Yeah. Yep.
So and so's mum." You even lose that sense of yourself, never mind the profession, the working person that you were before.
And you know what? I mean, we have 2 young children, and I am home more than my partner, and
Yeah.
I tell you, it's actually and we have a nanny, we're very lucky, but I think I mean, it's hard. It's really hard. It's very hard dealing with young children sometimes.
Mm.
It's not like when you're in work and you can tell someone what to do or you can work with
Yeah.
someone and it's a different challenge. But I know we'll talk about that confidence piece. And for anyone listening, if you don't have Strictly Come Dancing to bring you back to your career, we're going to help you. So don't worry about that. We're not just helping the Strictly Come Dancers here today.
Absolutely.
But we hear. I mean, I hear so much from people. I mean, on this fear. Of the return to work, the fact, as I said, they think they no longer have relevant skills, and employers will see their time off
Mm.
raising, the family as negative. Now, in the book, Julianne, the first, and I love the way you've split the book into 3 parts, and the first part is this starting out
Yeah.
phase
Mm.
and where to begin and get past the mental return to work blocks that we kind of talked about there. And I saw your career returners indicator last year that 89% of returners said that their confidence had taken a bit of a hit, and a big hit at that. Is that the big issue with getting started?
It's not the only issue, but
Mhm.
I'd say it's the most omnipresent issue, should we say, and I think it's the one that is virtually always highlighted by returners as one of their bangers when they're coming back. And I think it's not confidence per se. You might seem like the most confident person in your everyday life when you're going around in your local community, but it's this erosion of this sense of confidence that I can do what I did before. And that's what we hear it so often. exactly the sort of comments that you're saying, "I've been out too long. I'm too old now. I
Yeah.
don't think anybody would employ me now. I don't think I could cope with all the new tech. I don't understand the working world anymore." All these things, and what's underpinning all those comments is this loss of confidence. And I think it is the more time you've had out of the professional working world, the further away it seems. It just seems like a distant
Yeah.
memory, and you're sort of questioning, "Am I the same person that I was before?" And my first thing to say is, "You are. You are absolutely. That person is still there, and that person is actually by strengthened by all the experiences that you've had during your career break."
Yeah.
And your first step is recognizing that.
Yeah, I completely agree. I overheard someone say one day to a lady, I don't even want to say who it was, but
Mm.
she was worried about going back to work. And she said, like, oh, well, what have I learned really over the last 10 years? And, and I was saying, well, actually, you've done a lot, right? You've had to deal with X, you have to deal with Y. And her partner said to her, "Oh, yeah, it's really hard work picking the kids up from school every day, you know?" And it really, I couldn't believe it. I was like, God, if this is what some people are having to put up with, you've already got in your own head maybe the lack of confidence. If you then have a partner who's potentially not
Eroding your
supporting you or eroding your confidence, that's even worse, right?
Yeah, and I think there's an important point there, which is you need to find your return to work supporters. We call them in the
I
book,
love that.
I call them your cheerleaders. And I think it's that because you need your support team behind you.
Yeah.
It might not be the people closest to you. And the people closest to you, they might have a vested interest in you not going back to work because it's gonna make their life a bit harder.
That's what I was gonna say. I think in that particular case, I think there
Yeah.
was a little bit of that and a
Mm.
little bit of, "Ooh, we're gonna have to share some of the load here now."
Yeah, yeah. And I think that can compound because one of the other mental barriers is this sense of guilt. And what I hear a lot from, and this is particularly the women who've taken caring related career breaks, is guilt. It's like, I'm being really selfish about this. Why am I not happy with my life at the moment? Why don't, and I think, it is, again, if you really financially need to get back to work, that is a slightly different conversation. But even then, I hear a lot of guilt, which is my family's going to suffer. And one of the things that I do stress, and in the book you'll find quite a lot of psychology underpinning this. And I think it's quite reassuring,
It is.
which is that work and family can actually benefit each other. You can get more energy from if you're finding your life more fulfilling and balanced. And I found that when I was going back to work after a career break, I found that hugely reassuring.
Yeah, I completely agree. Even because we've got a young little guy, and last year, I was up a lot at nights, and it meant the days, I couldn't do as much work. Now this year, it's a totally different one, and I can do more, and you feel better for them as well. Actually, in a way, like it
Yeah.
actually helps your life as well as work.
Mm.
And I think if you've got the confidence to go, "Oh, I can actually do these things. It's not just about feeding and changing nappies and all of that, you know?"
Yeah, and if you're feeling that it is the right time for you to go back, then you go back, you start it builds your confidence, that
Yeah,
makes you feel better at home as well as at work. So I think there's a
totally.
really nice sort of positively reinforcing effect that comes out of that.
I agree. Now, if someone's listening here and they feel, I have the urge now to get back to work, where do you suggest the first place for them to begin the process?
Yeah. So I think the first step is getting some clarity about what you want to do next. And I think this is a fantastic opportunity. And I think a career break is one of the rare times in our working lives where we've stepped off the career ladder. We have a chance to pause, to reflect, to think, who am I now? And what do I want for the rest of my life? And you might not have thought about this for a very long time indeed. And the thinking about that in a structured way, and again, we talk through this in the book, how can you do that period of self-reflection so you're getting clearer on what are your values? What's important to you at this stage of your life? What's most important? What are your strengths? And by strengths, I mean both what are you good at and what are you energized by? What are those you think about doing that at work and you get a smile on your face. Um, think about that. And then what interests you?
Yeah.
And it's, some of those real fundamental building blocks of what makes work for you, what's going to make it fulfilling. And then you've got the practical overlay. You've got the practical overlay of what type of you might need, particular types of flexible working to earn a certain salary, but actually start with what's going to make work fulfilling. And then around that, think, and then how can I find that sort of work in a way that works for me?
Yeah, I love that. And I love in the book as well, you talked about, I think this is such a smart thing to do, is kind of ask others as well for feedback on your strengths. That is
Yeah.
such a great thing to do.
Yeah. And we need that. I
We
mean,
do.
I most people, if you say, "What are your strengths?" They get a bit if you ask them for their weaknesses, they can talk for hours. If you say, "What are your strengths?" and people might come up with something
Yeah.
generic like, "I work really hard," or
Yeah.
"People," but it's not you need to really hone it down and be specific.
Oh my God, I'm so with you, Julianne. It's interesting. I had the amazing Aisha Bissell on the show, and she wrote a book, how to live a long life you love.
Yeah, yeah.
And she talks about how it's very hard to find people what their values are. And she
Mm,
said, if you ask someone what their values are, similar to what you said about what your strengths are, they just kind of rattle off a few things.
yeah,
A better question, she said, is to say to someone, who's your hero
yeah,
and why? And once they answer that question, it actually gives you their values.
yeah, yeah,
You know, and I
yeah,
think it's similar with strengths. It's really difficult. It's like, I would, when I ask people what their strengths are, I don't ask them that. I usually say, what projects have you worked on that people really said you did brilliant. You were instrumental in that project.
yeah, yeah. And then it's factoring that in, and did you love it?
And did you
Because
love it?
there are some
Yes.
things you learnt to be good at work,
Yeah.
but actually they were a bit draining.
Yeah.
And if I said to you now, "Do you want to do that again?" You'd be like, "Oh, no, I
Oh
can
no.
do it, but do I really want to?" And that's not the way you want to gear your life.
I
And
love that.
yeah, I think there's another aspect as well when you're going back after a career break is to think, what are your motivations for going back?
Hmm.
For some people, it might be, I really want to use my brain in a different way again. Or it might be that, say if you're a parent, I want to be a role model for my children. Or it might be I miss the social side of working. So
Yeah.
get clear on that too, because that's one of your really necessary decision criteria. Because say, for example, you're thinking, I really want the social side of working, and then you find this great job, but it's like you sitting at home. You've got a lot of flexibility, but you're sitting at home with your laptop, then you're not gonna really get what you want out of work.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, the book is brilliant. I was saying to Julianne before we started recording that what's great as well, it's a bit like a workbook. It's very easy to follow through. It's not like some dense reading book. And I don't mean that disrespectfully. I mean that because it takes a lot of work, Julianne, to produce something that is easy to follow and you could pick it up easily, right? You don't have to read it cover to cover.
No, not at all. And that's what I want. I wanted it to be really practical,
Mm.
but practical with a real sort of psychology and coaching underpin.
Yeah.
So there are optional sections in there where you can, if you're interested in psychology, as I am, you can read those, and that's talking a bit about the sort of psychology studies. There are coaching exercises that I would say complete, but also, as you say, you can dip in if you're thinking this
Yeah.
is my particular challenge right now. You can just dip into that section of the book.
Yeah, it's really good. And that I mean, this is what I mean. It's so simple. When I looked at part two of the book, I was interested in part two, right? That finding work that works, as you just talked about, right? Does it work with your life?
Mm.
How is it going to connect in with where you're at? And I was really honed in on this kind of career break story.
Yeah.
And this made me laugh. And if Sally is listening, hi, Sally. Because a few years ago, I was helping a friend called Sally,
Mhm.
and she was super worried about her career break. And, she had worked in a big bank, and then her and her husband were moving back to Australia.
No.
And she'd had a 2-year break, right? Which wasn't really a break. She was actually helping get them set up. She was working. It wasn't like she was doing anything. And she came to my house and we actually spent a day trying to like get the CV up and running. She was really keen to get back to work.
Yeah.
And she was so anxious about this break. She was like, it was the key thing that was keeping her awake. She was like, I goes, listen, you know what? We're going to put in, she was like, how do I explain this break? I said, we're just going to put in transitioning family to Australia.
Yeah.
And because that's the truth, that's what you did.
Mm.
And it's not like you were, that is a lot of work. You got to set them up in a new school, get a house sorted. That is a project. That is a project.
Mm.
And it was interesting. She got a job at a big bank very shortly afterwards. And the bank didn't even bat an eyelid at this career break.
Yeah, yeah. I think, it's a great example, and I think it's a lot about how you see your career break and how you frame it and how you
Yes,
talk about it and how you feel about it. And what I find quite often with returners is there's a bit of apologizing, there's a bit of feeling
exactly.
defensive, sometimes a bit embarrassed about
Yeah,
having to take a career break. And that's why, what I talk about is how to putting your career break in the middle of your story. And I think it's if you think about it, it's part of your story. You
great
don't
point.
ignore it, but also you don't make it the total focus. So what you're doing, and it's this aspect of reintegrating yourself with your professional career. So you're talking in your story about what you did before,
Hmm.
who you were before from a working perspective. You're then integrating the reason for your career break. And some people might have a lot to talk about in that. I mean, it sounds like Sally going back to Australia, what she did, how she settled,
Exactly.
or she built. Other people, if you might have had a painful reason for your career break,
Yeah,
might be bereavement or something you don't really want to talk about. You just mention it, you move on. And now the third stage is, what do you want to do now? Show the
exactly.
enthusiasm, show how it all ties together. And then you feel better. You come across as more confident and positive. Um, and you framed your career break in this really positive way.
I love that, Julianne. I really do. And I think it's interesting because even I had that, I'd been working for 20 over 20 years. And I remember saying to my partner, and I've said this on the podcast before, so I'm sure my listeners will be like, oh God, he's mentioned that again. But I remember saying when we were having our two children, I said, because look, someone has to take a slight step back. I'm just being honest, right? Like, you
Mhm.
can't, like,
Mhm.
you've decided to have children, you can't, I personally don't think you both can have big, massive careers if you really want to enjoy the kids, for them to feel, that someone, you can't be both CEOs of big companies, as an example, right?
Yeah.
Now, I said to my partner, I was like, look, I'm still ambitious though for my
Mhm.
career, even
Mhm.
though I'm taking this step back. And he said to me, you should be ambitious for your life, not your career. And it was
Yeah.
such an interesting moment because when I think about the Sally example, etc.,
Mhm.
you know,
Mhm.
life and career, I was ambitious for our life because we wanted to have children. We needed we that one of us decided to take a step back, and I
Mhm.
actually built the podcast, did all these other things
Yeah.
that have been brilliant for me. So
And that's this opportunity. This
yeah,
is the opportunity of the career break. I do think, there's something so important here, which is caring is an incredibly valuable role in society. Yeah.
absolutely.
And we need to value it ourselves, and we need society to value it more. But we can play our part in that by valuing it ourselves and not thinking,
Yeah,
well, if I'm taking a career break, that means I'm not ambitious and I don't want this. It's absolutely not. It's making that choice at that part of your life. And for some people, it is a choice. For other people, things happen to them. It could be your parent gets Alzheimer's, or
correct.
you have a child who has health issues. It might not be a positive choice. But one way or the other, it's like it's a super valuable role, and you learn a lot from it, and you grow a lot from it. And I think I love this aspect of thinking about your life as a whole, and it ties in with this message that I like to give people, which is, we sometimes feel compromise is bad in a career, yeah? But actually, compromise is good, because compromise means you have more in your life and you need to make choices.
Absolutely.
And it's making those choices positively. That's what this is all about.
I love that. That is so true. And I think, to me, if when someone comes in and you can, and they're sitting in front of you and they can articulate why they've taken the career break, etc. Like, that person sometimes versus someone who's like gone, oh, well, I've worked 50 hours a week for the last 10 years. And, I kind of go, oh, I'm not sure. Like it's,
Mm.
yes, that's a choice, but sometimes I look at that person and go, "Wow, are they going to be burnt out in another year?" All of that, right? So there is, I think sometimes people underestimate that actually being confident enough to take that break and, as you said, speak about it,
Yeah.
not as the main thing, just as a part of your journey.
Yeah.
That's a
So
great
it's
thing to be able
very
to do.
powerful. And recognizing one of the things that employers say to us, and you mentioned at the beginning, we've worked with hundreds of employers now. We've brought thousands of returners back into employed roles. And there is a journey that we see with employers, which is at the beginning, they're saying, oh, we'll just look past the career break. And then they start to value it and they're saying, these are people who come in with a fresh perspective. They're
Yeah,
so motivated
yeah,
and they see the world in a different way, and that's fantastic for us as a team. They bring that aspect of cognitive diversity, diversity of thought, which is what employers really want. And I think that's a really lovely switch that we see in employers, but we can also sit with return because they start to say to us, "Well, yeah, I can see you could be a doctor," and you go, "I'm much more empathetic with my patients." You could be a senior leader and you're going, "I'm so much better at influencing skills."
yeah.
Or you could just be that feeling that more resilient because of what you've gone through. And I think and you sense it yourself and your team, your managers see it too.
So true. And we'll touch on that and on the work you guys do with organizations. And just before that, if someone is here and they're thinking about going back for a job, like how do they find a job? Like if someone's sitting here now listening and they're going, "Oh God, where do I start? Do I re-engage my old networks? Do I do some freelance work?" What do you say is like one of the first things to do to kind of find that job?
I think you do need to be creative, and I
Yeah.
think this is where the note of reality comes in. And it is tough getting a job through just normal routes, the advertised job where they're getting thousands of applications, and they are looking for reasons to screen people out. And sadly, research shows that not having recent experience is one of these major factors why people are initially screened out. So you are not imagining that you might be being rejected for your career break if you're just applying for online job roles. Um, but that can be our default. So I want a job. I'll see what's out there. I'm qualified for it. I'll apply for it. I didn't get it, so I can't get back. Yeah. So don't fall into that trap. I think you need to be more creative and you need to be more active and engaged. I think the point you mentioned though about getting back in touch with your old networks, I mean, that's a really fundamentally positive thing to do.
Absolutely.
And even before you're at the stage of actively applying for jobs, it gets you back in that professional identity. You start talking to people about work, you understand the language, you can talk to them about what's
Absolutely.
changed. What gaps do I need to fill?
Well, do you know what you also find sometimes, Julianne, is some things haven't changed at all. You go,
Yes,
"Oh,
yeah.
actually, oh no, they're still dealing with that old crap."
Yeah, it's so true. It's so true. So much hasn't changed.
Yeah,
It might be the text change, but actually, the fundamentals about work, they're exactly the same as they were, 10, 20 years ago.
absolutely, absolutely. And I think like, you think about things like I overhear all the time. The thing I hear the most is, "Oh, my manager is terrible." You know, that
Yeah,
doesn't happen
that's
whether
really changed.
that doesn't matter if you were out of your job for 10 years or 3 weeks.
Mm, mm.
You're usually going to hear that. And then it's like, "Oh, okay, let's try and set an intention around how we deal with that." Or, so yeah, I totally agree with you. Now, you talked about there partnering with lots of leading employers, to I suppose bring back thousands because you have brought back thousands of professionals into skilled roles, which is so amazing. How does this concept of the returnship program work? Like, what do you guys do? Just for our listeners who might be going, "What the hell is that all
Yeah.
about?"
What even is that? There is a little bit of jargon here, so let me, just explain a little bit about it. So A returner program is a supported bridge back to work for people who've taken a long career break. So the great thing about a returner program, if you've had a career break, is this is the opportunity where they're screening you in because you've got your career break. They're not screening you out. So typically, there is a requirement. It's often sort of 18 months to 2 years of being out of the workforce, and that typically also includes if you've been working small scale around the family rather than completely economically inactive. But the way it works is with a returnship, you do a paid professional placement. Average length is round about 6 months. Some are a bit shorter, some are a bit longer. But you are doing a job. However, you are not doing a job with that pressure to hit the ground running on day one, which can feel incredibly daunting. You are being assessed against people who have also taken career breaks rather than people in a job at the moment, which helps to avoid a lot of those recruiter biases. And you're getting support through the transition. So, with the organization that we work with, we have a fantastic career returners coaching program which supports returners through what can be a very wobbly emotional transition when you're going back in. You may well be joining as part of a cohort, which is lovely. So, you get this great sense of peer support, you get mentoring, you get training. So, you're really set up for success. And then, if it's a success for both sides, then there is a high likelihood of a permanent role at the end of it. So that's how
I
a
I
return.
love it. I love it. I mean, I used to do a lot of work with the graduate programs in the bank, one of the big banks I worked at, and in some ways, it's a bit like that for anyone listen, because they would get a coach, they would get a bit of support. It's like, you go on different projects, etc. So I kind of see it a bit
It's
like
got
that.
Yeah, so it's got that sort of structure.
Yeah,
But what's different is you are using your skills and experience.
yeah.
And so you're coming back in typically at mid-level, sometimes up to senior level. And there are some programs which are about retraining. If you're on for that, if you're somebody, we know that a chunk of returners actually quite feel like a career change after a
Mm.
career break. So there are opportunities for that too.
Oh wow, I didn't know that. That's brilliant.
Yeah, so different forms of program, and there's also another form of program, which is called supported hiring, where you're coming directly back into a permanent role. So you get the same sort of wrapper of support, but you're starting directly into a permanent role. So all sorts of different ways that
Oh,
employers are working with us on these programs.
it's brilliant, for any employers out there that, if you haven't heard about it, you gotta look into it. And I know, Julianne, I know you're doing a lot of work across the UK and Ireland.
Yeah,
Brilliant,
yeah,
brilliant stuff. I mean, the other one I remember when I was in, one of the big American banks was we had, ex-military people and bringing them back into
yes,
work, and
yes,
that was
exactly.
very successful as well because they had a lot of leadership skills, etc., that could be very useful within a big corporate environment.
Yeah, yeah. So there's quite a few of these types of programs, and I think it's all the reason that employers are doing this is because they recognize that there's different sources of talent out there.
Absolutely.
I think you need to know that as well as a returner. They're not doing it just to do you a favor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
They're doing it because they recognize that this is a great talent pool that they're missing out
It's such a great point. Such a
on.
great point. Now we're
Mhm.
on to our final question for, back to the book. Part three of the book, I love it. Talks about thriving back at work. So, say you've been on the returner program, or you're not even on the returner program. You
Yeah,
found a job.
go back.
You're back in, and I honestly have seen a few people struggle with
Mm,
the
mm.
return back. They're like, "Oh, I'm failing at everything. I'm not good at the job, and now I'm not good at the home either." What do you think's what's the top thing for someone to thrive once they do get back into work and they're trying to balance maybe, home life as well as the work life?
Yeah. I think a lot of it is around your mental attitudes when you're getting back in. I mean, I think I sort of talk quite a bit about psychologically preparing. And I think you do need to prepare yourself that it's going to be a bit of a roller coaster. You do need to prepare yourself that probably about 4 to 6 weeks in, you're going to think, I'm failing at everything. I can't do this. It's all going wrong, you know, and recognize that's normal Because where we often see people dropping out is they hit that point, and often we can get it actually when we start a new job anyway. It's just compounded because you've had a career break. And it's when you realize you've got to build up your networks again. You
Yeah.
don't know the language, it's all quite different. And suddenly you get through that slight honeymoon period and it all feels really hard. So I think this aspect of understanding that you're going through this transition period and getting support with that. Now, if you're on a returner program, you will have that structured support. If not, you need to find your own support. And whether you're on a program or not, you need to get that support at home too. And I think the other thing mistake that we find quite a lot of returners do is they try and keep up. They might be doing some great volunteer work and they're doing so much at home and they try and just add work on top of that. You know, you've got to make space for work or else you're setting yourself up for failure. So I think that's often the practical preparation as well.
I love that. God, you're a natural on a podcast, I must say, Julianne. Very, very good advice. It's interesting. I didn't have this question, but just linked to that. I have seen some people go back to work, and this is particularly women who maybe been out of work for 15 years. They become almost like the CEO of their own household, and they are more the boss,
Yeah.
and they struggle with
Mm.
having to compromise, etc. And
Mm.
maybe with younger people who are like going, "Oh, sorry, we need to discuss that." And have you seen that? Because I've seen a few like that where the person's telling me about it, and I'm like, "Yep, I can kind of see what's going on here." Within the world of work, you do most times have to work with other people, and you have to compromise a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's where it is. You need to accept feedback when you come back
Yes,
into work, and that can be hard.
very
That
hard.
most of us don't like getting negative feedback, but actually you need to be seeking feedback,
Yeah,
and that's what's working about what you're doing, and do ask for feedback on what you're doing well. I think that's important.
exactly. And
And
as for examples,
yeah,
I always say,
ask for
ask for
examples.
specific
Yeah,
examples,
yeah,
because then that is it, that you can do something with that. You could
yeah.
say, Julianne, in the meeting last Tuesday, where we were talking about funding for the project, you got very defensive around blood. Let's
Yeah,
walk through
yeah,
that, right? Being
yes.
specific with the person,
Yeah.
and you being specific to say, give me actual examples will be
The
helpful for me.
examples. Yeah, yeah, and I think that will help you because you might be in an organization with a different sort of culture or, the world of work has changed. And
Yep.
if you stopped work before, uh, hybrid working, and you're working at home or just using all the tech, there is that evolution of understanding, and you need to accept you're on a learning curve.
Yes.
We're all on a learning curve. We need to ask questions, and we need to be open
Correct.
to learning, and also not be a perfectionist, and we're all
That's
guilty
a
of this,
good
aren't we?
point.
Is it's,
Yes.
"Oh, I need to be I should be doing better at this, I should know it all that." Just be patient with yourself.
I agree. It's like anything. There's going to be different scales of people. There's going to be some people are going to be super hard on themselves. They're perfectionists, as you
Yeah,
said. And then there's going to be others who are going to struggle with, I've been the boss for 15
yeah,
years and I've told the husband, the
yeah,
children what to do. And now I'm going to have to compromise. Ooh, this
yeah,
is tricky.
yeah.
So I think it's just understanding there's a wide spectrum
Yes,
of
exactly.
difference here.
Yeah, and you do find your way through it, but as I say, there are some ups and downs in there, and I think, this the end point, I think this really positive note here is all of the people that the book has many, many great stories in there about
I
people. They're
love them.
all anonymized, but, they are based on real people, and at the end, everybody is saying, I've done this. I'm so
Yeah.
happy to be back at work." It may have been tough, it may have been rocky. Um, you may find people who, it's a stepping stone. You start in a job and you go, "I'm back in, but it's not quite the right thing." That's okay.
Yeah.
You're not starting again. And even if you decide, we talked at the beginning of this about there might be stops and starts, you might need to take another break. That's okay. It's all, allow life to happen. Um, but, don't take what control you can within that. And I think again that's an important message that I think it's important to put across. There are some things within your control. There are some things out of your control.
Yeah. Yeah.
It could be related to your health issues, something else happens in life. It might not work at that time, but you just keep moving through and you recognize that you're never starting again. You're
Yeah.
just building.
I so love that we finished on that because, I think, yeah, you're so right. Anyone that I've spoken to who has gone back and done this, and even if it hasn't worked out like they had wanted and they're out again after 6 months, they're still in a much stronger position than they were six
Yeah.
months before. And they now can tweak the next role to go, you know what, I need
Yeah.
to, as
Yeah.
you said, it might be that I don't want to work from home. I want to go into an office, or you know
Yeah.
what? I need more support at home, right? I need to get a cleaner or I need to do
Yeah.
that. All of that, I mean, we're all learning. Come on, let's be honest. I mean, Jesus, I've made a note of something I need to do better on today myself,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I'm 46 years of
Always
age.
doing that, aren't we? Yeah. 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 Never stop,
Never stop.
I think, what another concept that I talk about in the book, and I love this, is like the tweaks you can make. Sometimes it's just little tweaks you can make
Yeah.
that make your whole work life so much better. Sometimes you do need to make huge changes, but sometimes those little things can make a huge difference.
So true. Now, here's the final three questions we ask all of our guests, Julianne.
Mm,
We're all about being better at work. What's
yeah.
the smallest possible change our listeners could do to have an impact and a better day at work tomorrow?
So, funnily enough, I think this bit that I was just talking about there, I think understand for yourself what gets you back in balance. And I used to, before I set up Career Returners, I used to do some work supporting doctors. And doctors have the biggest challenges often in terms of the stress that they're under. And I remember one doctor, and we talked about what little tweaks she could make. She had this sort of very pressured life. She had busy home life, busy pressured working life. And she said, "I never see any fresh air." And the little tweak she made was just when she was going from one appointment to the next, meeting to the next, she walked outside of the building, and she did that regularly. And she said that tiny little tweak made such a difference.
Wow.
And I think it's that. Think about if you're feeling pressured on all levels, what small things can you do? What small thing can you do? Don't feel you've got to completely change everything. So I think that's my
I love that. I love that. Now, can you share with our listeners something you learned or experienced at work that
yeah.
unexpectedly made your whole life better?
Mm. And I think for me, the lesson was about perfectionism. And I very much early on in my career, I thought perfection it was one of those things. Yes, you would say it was a weakness, but really, you thought it was a strength. Secretly, I was like, yeah,
Yeah.
aiming for top standards. And what I learned, I was one of my early jobs in consulting was very very pressured, and I got, very, very stressed in that job. And what I realized is that I was trying to do everything perfect. It just didn't work that way. And I needed to really work out what were the most important things to do. And that we know this now from all the theory, 80/20, whatever, but it's hard. It's hard if you're trying to do everything. So I
Absolutely.
think learning that lesson actually then helped me hugely as a parent, where you can't be a perfectionist as a
Yeah.
parent. And I think if I hadn't learnt that at work, then I would have had a much tougher time in parenting, and that's actually helped me through life.
Wow.
So yeah,
That's a
that
good I need to take that one on myself. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. And we
mm,
finish all of our chats with the following question. Can you recall the best advice you've ever received that you think's made you better at work?
yeah. I think the best advice I've ever received is that you need to value what you bring that is different from everybody else rather than the same. And I somebody gave me that when I was I'd retrained as a psychologist, as a chartered psychologist. And I was thinking, I've got no practical experience, and there's all these people here and they've been doing this. They did it as their first degree and they've got all this experience. And somebody said to me, but look at what you do have. And what I did have was all this business experience and my career break and was bringing that in. And I think that piece of advice has again served me very well.
I
Mm,
love that. It's everyone can bring something unique, and you've got
yeah,
your own story. It's interesting you said that, and it reminded me of a lady called Carly, who's I was saying to her at one point when I was thinking about doing the podcast, I said, "Oh God, but there's people that are doing other podcasts the same as this, blah
yeah.
blah blah." And she said to me, "What if everyone that wrote a book thought like that? Like, oh well, there's loads of other books out there." And to your point, it's like everyone's got their own unique experience, their
Yeah.
own thing to bring through their own
Mm,
skills,
mm.
their own ways of doing things. And I love that you ended on that because I couldn't agree more with that advice you got from your colleague or friend. Listen, it's been brilliant to have you on. You're a natural, I have to say, on talking through your book. It's been so lovely to chat to you today.
Oh, a huge pleasure. Really, really enjoyed our conversation.
So good, so good. And listen, for anyone that wants more information on Julianne, there's so many places to go. So let me get cracking here. You've got Career Returners, that's careerreturners.com. Julianne and her amazing team are on a mission to build a fairer and more inclusive working world by making career breaks a valued part of a lifetime career. So on that website that I just mentioned, you'll learn more on the global online returner community, which
Mhm.
Julianne touched on a second ago, and return to work employability programs. Now, there's also the Career Returners podcast, Julianne, which
Exactly.
that's a
Yes.
great place for people to hear from real people as well.
Yeah, I think, this bit of you've got to see it to believe it. I think it's great to hear other people's stories. And if you get onto the Career Returners podcast, you can hear so many stories of real life people who have found their way back to work. And they're really honest as
Oh,
well.
I love it. It's brilliant. And you've
Mm.
also got we've never had so many resources, guys, for one of our guests. You've also got the Cisco Academy, which I
Yes.
love, where you can find lots of free training courses. And of course, we've got Julianne's amazing new book, Return Journey: How to Get Back to Work and Thrive After a Career Break. That is out in September this year, 2025. If you're listening after that, it's out. If it's before, it's coming. It's coming September 25.
Exactly. 4th of September. Watch out for it.
4th of September. Watch out for it. Thank you so much, Julianne. We've loved having you on.
Oh, thank you.
And
It's
please
been
keep doing what you're doing. It's brilliant. We're so inspired. My co host, Annette, wanted to say to you as well, just so inspired by what you're doing and what you're trying to help society think differently about career breaks. So I have to mention that she also said to tell you that today.
oh, thank you.